The haunted convent. The village was nestled deep in the Italian countryside, surrounded by rolling hills and fields of golden wheat. It was a small village with only a few hundred inhabitants, and everyone knew everyone else's business. At the edge of the village stood the convent. It was a large, imposing building with high walls and narrow windows. The nuns who lived there were an austere and secretive bunch, rarely venturing out into the village except to beg for alms. The villagers whispered that the nuns were in league with the devil himself. And they said that the nuns were performing dark and twisted rituals in the dead of night, and that strange lights could be seen flickering in the windows of the convent. Maria arrived in the village one bright sunny morning. She was a young woman of 25, with long brown hair and bright green eyes. She was fleeing from an abusive husband, and she had nowhere else to go. The villagers took pity on her and gave her food and shelter. As Maria settled into life in the village, she heard the rumors about the convent. She was fascinated by the mysterious lives of nuns, and she couldn't resist the urge to investigate. She asked the villagers about the convent, but they warned her to stay away. They told her that the nuns were dangerous, and that she would be wise to leave them alone. But Maria's curiosity got the better of her. Late one night, when the moon was full and the stars were bright, Maria crept out of the house where she was staying and made her way to the convent. As she approached the high walls and peered inside the devil's ritual, the nun led Maria through the dark and musty halls of the convent. Maria could hear the sound of chanting growing louder as they approached a door at the end of the hall. The nun pushed open the door, and Maria saw a room filled with nuns, all dressed in black robes. They were standing in a circle around a large pentagram drawn on the floor, and at the center of the pentagram was a figure that Maria could only assume was the devil. Maria's heart began to race as she watched the nuns continue their chanting. She could feel the energy in the room growing more intense as the devil spoke to them in low, guttural tones. His voice was deep and menacing, and Maria could feel his malevolent energy emanating from him. She shivered with fear. Suddenly, Maria heard a noise behind her. She turned to see one of the nuns staring at her with a look of anger and suspicion in her eyes. Maria tried to back away, but the nun grabbed her arm and dragged her to the center of the pentagram. "What are you doing here?" The nun demanded. "You have no business in this place." Maria tried to explain that she was just curious, but the nun was not interested in her excuses. She pushed Maria down onto the floor and began to chant in a language that Maria didn't understand. The other nuns joined in, and the energy in the room grew even more intense. Maria tried to struggle, but she was held down by the nun's strong grip. She could feel the devil's energy growing stronger, and she knew that she was in grave danger. As the ritual continued, Maria closed her eyes and prayed for deliverance. She knew that she had made a terrible mistake in coming to the convent, and she wished that she had listened to the villagers' warnings. Suddenly, there was a blinding flash of light, and Maria felt a rush of wind as the devil was banished from the room. When she opened her eyes, she saw that the nuns were lying on the ground, unconscious. The only person standing was the nun who had brought her inside. The nun turned to Maria and said, "You must leave now. You have seen too much." Maria fled from the convent, her heart pounding with fear. She knew that she had narrowly escaped with her life, and she vowed never to return to that cursed place again. The convent was shrouded in darkness, but Maria could see a faint flickering light coming from one of the windows. She crept closer until she was standing right beneath the window. She could hear the sound of chanting coming from inside. Maria was about to turn and run when she heard a voice behind her. "What are you doing here?" said the voice. Maria turned around and saw a nun standing behind her. The nun's face was obscured by her habit, but Maria could see the glint of her eyes in the darkness. "I was just curious," said Maria. "I wanted to see what was going on inside." The nun looked at Maria for a long moment, and then she said, "Come with me." The nun led Maria inside the convent, and Maria's adventure began. Trapped After witnessing the dark ritual at the convent, Maria couldn't shake the feeling of fear that had settled in her bones. She tried to put the experience behind her, but she couldn't shake the feeling that the devil was watching her, waiting for his chance to strike. Several months after her encounter at the convent, Maria was walking home from the market when she felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned around to see a group of nuns standing behind her. Her heart began to race as she realized that they were the same nuns that she had seen performing the dark ritual. Without a word, the nuns grabbed her and dragged her into the convent. Maria struggled and fought, but the nuns were surprisingly strong. They dragged her down a dark corridor and into a small room at the back of the convent. Inside the room, Maria was brought before the devil and the other nuns. The devil was even more terrifying than Maria remembered. He was larger and more imposing, with horns that curved towards the sky. His eyes glowed with a malevolent energy, and Maria felt a chill run down her spine. The nuns began to chant in a language that Maria didn't understand, and the devil spoke to them in low, guttural tones. Maria tried to run, but the nuns were too fast. They dragged her back to the center of the pentagram, where the devil was waiting for her. Maria could feel the energy in the room growing more intense as the ritual continued. She knew that she was in grave danger, and she tried to summon the strength to fight back. But her efforts were in vain. The nuns held her down, and the devil's energy grew stronger with each passing moment. Maria closed her eyes and prayed for deliverance, but she knew that it was futile. She was trapped, and there was no escape. As the ritual came to its climax, Maria could feel the devil's power surging through her body. She screamed in terror as the devil claimed her soul. When Maria opened her eyes, she was lying on the floor of the convent. The nuns were standing over her, looking down with a mixture of fear and awe. Maria could feel the devil's energy still coursing through her veins, and she knew that she had been changed forever. The letter. After the terrifying encounter at the convent, Maria fled the village and traveled from place to place, always looking over her shoulder. She took odd jobs to survive, never staying in one place for too long. But no matter where she went, she couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was following her. Several months after her encounter at the convent, Maria received a letter in the mail. The letter was written in a spidery, looping script, and it contained a single sentence: "We are coming for you." Maria's heart began to race as she read the words. She knew that she was being hunted and that her life was in danger. She tried to put the letter out of her mind, but she couldn't shake the feeling of fear that had settled in her bones. Days turned into weeks, and weeks turned into months. Maria tried to live a normal life, but she knew that she could never be truly safe. The letter hung over her like a dark cloud, a constant reminder of the danger that she was in. One night, as Maria was walking home from her job at a local restaurant, she heard a noise behind her. She turned around to see a group of nuns standing in the shadows. Maria tried to run, but the nuns were too fast. They grabbed her and dragged her into an alley. Maria knew that she was in grave danger. She could feel the energy in the air growing more intense as the nuns closed in on her. She tried to fight back, but her efforts were in vain. The nuns were too strong. Just as Maria thought that all was lost, she heard a voice calling out from the darkness, "Leave her alone," it shouted. The nuns turned to see who it was, giving Maria a chance to escape. Maria ran as fast as she could, not stopping until she was safely inside her apartment. She collapsed onto her bed, her heart pounding with fear. As Maria lay there, trying to catch her breath, she realized that she couldn't keep running forever. She knew that she had to face her fears head-on, no matter what the cost. She took a deep breath and vowed to find a way to defeat the nuns and the devil once and for all.